hopefully you can just see how busy we are trying to get a bite. Well, welcome back to the channel, everyone. And today we're looking at something that is coming up so often in my fishing that I just had to do a video about it. And it is all about deep margins. So today I've got this lovely margin here. It's going to be full of fish, I know it is. But I've got the dreaded situation where it's 3.5 foot next to some reeds. I've got loads of reeds grown out from the bank. How do you fish in that situation? You can't fish on the bottom, it's too deep. The textbooks will tell you to find 20 inches of water. Can't find it. The slope's horrible. It's just, I know if I fish on the bottom here, it'll just be an absolute waste of time. However, all this cover, I've got loads of grass here, I've got reeds that have fallen over where the ducks have been in and out, I've got sedges, I've got scum that's blown in. That situation where you've got all this cover can be your biggest friend. If I was to fish on the bottom next to them, I'd have a nightmare. I'd miss loads of bites, I'd foul up loads of fish. However, fishing shallow next to them can be absolutely deadly. Now, the first person I ever saw do this was Stu Polser, who was a great angler, a friend of mine, and he used to take tunnel barn apart and used to go in the summer and you'd be keeping up with him all day, and then he'd go down the edge, and I just assumed that he was fishing normal down the edge style on the bottom, potting lots of bait in, but he wasn't. He was actually fishing shallow next to the cover. And it's become a really popular method now. Loads of the great F1 anglers are doing this. It's no massive secret anymore, but it is when you're faced with this situation where even if I was to garden this out and make myself a little hole tight to the bank or whatever, it wouldn't be very good because it'd be rooty, there'd be loads of grass in there. It just wouldn't be the most effective way of catching them. However, I've got this situation where the reeds have fell over. I know if I feed this properly, I can catch them shallow next to that. So in a sense, what is a negative in the fact that I've got this situation where I can't fish how I would like to fish on the bottom, actually I can spin that into a positive, and this could actually end up being better than it ever would be fishing on the bottom, because you're getting loads of fish, you can be really aggressive with the bait. It could be an absolute winner. So if you have got those deep margins or you're fishing a venue where it's got them, don't just write it off. Think about fishing shallow in the edge. Now this is particularly effective when you've got a bit of wind, or like today we've got loads of cover and a bit of space. If you've every peg in, probably not the best, but if you've got a bit of space, a couple of pegs between anglers, or you're on a corner peg or something like that, this is absolutely fantastic. Now all I've been doing, I've been priming this with casters. You could do it with pellets, you could do it with meat if meat's allowed, maggots, anything like that, but one thing you want is quite a lot of smaller particles. Because these reeds are in the water, I actually want some of these casters to get stuck up in there so the fish are sort of rooting around in there. It's the perfect situation. What I've got here with the fact that the ducks have knocked those reeds over is absolutely perfect. Can't wait to try it. And I've been feeding this now for a couple of hours while I've been doing some other stuff, and I think that's just going to be absolutely alive with fish by the time I go on it. So firstly, let's have a look at the little rig that we've set up. Now, because I'm fishing for F1s, that's obviously reflected. If I was fishing for carp, obviously everything would be scaled up. But the elastic is our 8 to 10 orange zip. Perfect for these F1s. I could go up to the white. Obviously when you're fishing short, you can fish a slightly heavier elastic, so I'd have no problems using the white, but this is a great starting point. And then the rig is important. You're not allowed to overshot here. If I could overshot, I probably would do in this situation, because I could tuck my pole right under the grass and tap my pole tip and catch loads of fish. Can't do that here, it's not allowed. But we can fish with a tiny short line. So that's what I've done. I've got about 2 inches of line between the float and the pole tip, but I wouldn't hesitate in pushing that up so it's right next to the pole connector. It's well within the rules, that is, so I can do that if I want to. However, I'm just going to have it there to start with. And then I've got a 4x10 big head, which is just a brilliant float. I absolutely love these. Caught so many fish on these over the years. It's brilliant. And then I've just got my float set 10 inches deep. I've got a little bulk down here, and then I've got a 2-inch hook length at the bottom. So everything's in proportion. The reason we've got the short hook length on is so we can get the bulk below centre of the rig. So because I was fishing with I'm only fishing 10 inches deep, if I was to use a 6-inch hook length, for example, my bulk would be right here underneath the float. So I'd have all this loose slack line. I don't want that. I want my bulk down so I've got control and stability in the rig when there's lots of fish moving around. So that's why I've got the bulk and the short hook length. Hook is a 16 B9 11-eyed, absolute winner, and then I've got a medium bait band on there where I can push a caster in there. I think we should do some fishing. Like I say, this can be a nightmare scenario for fishing on the bottom, but by feeding it up with casters or baits like that, we can hopefully have an absolute bonanza. Now, one little fine detail that I've just got to say is about where I've got my bait placed. Obviously, I'm right-handed, so I have my bait tray on my left-hand side. It's just a natural position. I can pick my bait up, throw it, catapult it and everything, and that's what I do. However, when I'm fishing to my right like this, and I'm sat like this, obviously to get my bait from round here is a bit of a faff. I've got to reach round. So what I do actually, I've got my little bowl and ring here with like a second lot of casters in there. And it's just such a small detail, this, but it's one that I think is so important. So I can just throw them in with my right hand when I'm either I hook a fish, I can quickly just pick some casters up the right ear, throw them in, I can land my fish, then I can pick them up with my left hand and throw them in. So I've got bait on both sides, and I think that helps me feed more regularly and more accurately because I've got the bait just to hand, just right here. And it's such a tiny little thing that, just having that there, but I think it just makes me more efficient than what I would be if I had just had my bait round here. I find it awkward when I'm fishing like this and I'm picking my bait up and throwing it. I just find it a bit awkward, whereas when I'm fishing here I can just pick up some bait and throw it in like a dart, and I just find I'm more accurate. And I will show you that when I get fishing. But yeah, so that's just a tiny little point, but one I thought was important to show you. Okay, let's get some fishing done. I'm absolutely gasping to get in here because I've been feeding it for all this time. And like I say, this is like later in the match, you've fed it up for a little while, you've got those fish coming in confidently, like the wood in the edge, but you can't catch them because it's too deep. And this is where this little rig and this situation where you're loose feeding by hand all the time can really score. And there's a few little tricks to actually get the bites, because I'm trying to lay my rig right against this grass, but actually getting it in position and not getting it stuck up and everything is difficult. So I'll show you why I have the bait just here. Look, so I'm shipping out now, and I'm fully focused. I just can't pick the bait up as well on this side. So I've got them casters just to hand like that. And we get the rig in position, and let's see if we catch one. There we go, as quick as that. And I must stress that obviously I've been feeding this for a long time, so the fish are going to be super confident. And obviously the fishing's good on this lake anyway. But this is why this is sometimes a better option than actually fishing on the bottom anyway. So what can actually be a negative, we can flip it into a positive by approaching our margin in a totally different way. Now, I'm all for trap setting and feeding little piles of bait or fishing paste and stuff, but sometimes you draw swims that aren't, sometimes you just draw swims that aren't good enough for that. So let's have a look. I mean, that was really quick. And I've actually, you might notice I've got some ducks in my swim as well. Which, to be honest, I like that. I like having the ducks here. So I'll throw them casters in. And one thing about this situation where you've got the reeds and you've got the ducks and everything like that, you don't actually have to go mad on the bait. I'm just throwing small amounts in because the fish are comfortable. You've got cover, you've got everything that they want. Right, so let's start the actual process of showing you how to get the bites, because that was a bit too quick, that first one. So you'll notice straight away what I'm doing, I'll lay the rig in, and then I start just lifting like that. So I'm lifting all the time and just lifting my float out. The reason is, if I just leave my caster hanging there, I just don't think it looks right. Whereas if I'm just constantly lifting it, I can imagine them rooting around in that grass looking for something to eat, and my little caster constantly being lifted and dropped catches their eye and gets you that bite. So no more bites. So I actually pull my pole away, throw the casters in, lower it in, lift it, drop it, lift and drop. Oh, missed the bite. Oh, there we go. same rules apply as normal shallow fishing. We've got to find the correct depth. We've only just started. We've got to find the depth where the fish are comfortable feeding. Maybe that they're really shallow, it may be that they're a bit deeper. We've got a bit of water to play with it being over 3 foot deep down there. And there we go, we're catching them. One thing that's a bit annoying today is I've got casters that are a few days old and they're actually a bit soft. So they're actually popping. Every time I catch a fish, they're popping, which is a bit annoying. So we've started well. Let's get some casters in. That duck's going to have a little mosey in there, don't mind that. And then just before I put my rig in, I'm going to throw a little pinch in. Not as many. Not quite as many baits this time. So put a decent amount in and then not so many. And we're hoping if you get stuck in that grass and keeps the fish up there. And it's just going to take a little bit of fathoming out, because this is literally just me starting in here. We'll have to work out where the fish are. Maybe they're a bit deeper. I've gone in quite shallow. There's a few bits of reed and stuff in my way. I'm just going to get them out of the swim to start with. It's alright having them bits of reed and stuff, but it's a bit annoying. I just find that easier to just have my bait here. I can just throw, almost like a dart player, throw them in overhand. I just find that a bit easier than doing it the other way. So tucking that rig up against the reeds, and there we go. Throw some bait in. And I think we could have an absolute field day here, to be honest with you. Imagine it's now 3 o'clock, which is prime time for your last hour for your edge. You've been feeding it for the last couple of hours. You've probably been out shallow in the lake or doing something else, and all of a sudden you've got a margin now that's just a couple of metres away from you, full of fish. And this is when you can do your big weights, because all of a sudden you could catch 50-60 pound of these F1s shallow because you're fishing so close in. So throw a decent enough pinch, put your top kit together, ship out, get in position, and then just before we swing the pole into position, I'll just pick up a few more casters, throw them in, feed the ducks. We don't mind the ducks. I'm actually going to start giving it a little tap as well, just to see if that's going to work for me. Tapping obviously works really well. There we go, caught one on a tap. A bit of a smaller one that though. I don't know if you noticed, I actually dropped down a few inches. Went a little bit deeper just to see if the fish are a bit deeper. But not at the moment. Well, they were, obviously I caught one straight away. This is a brilliant method. And this is a sort of thing that's coming more and more into my fishing, because this is a venue where you could always get into shallower margins, but you can't anymore. It's just not an option because the reeds are growing up, the venue's getting a bit more mature. So all of a sudden those lovely shallow margins are becoming a thing of the past. And we've got to look at other options, and this is such a good option when you're faced with this sort of situation. And it's quick because we're so close to us. You can imagine another 6 weeks time, we're still in April, but you can imagine another 6 weeks time when the reeds have fully grown out, you get a real big reed bed down your edge and you can get a load of fish piled up in there, especially if you've got like a bit of wind blowing in there or something like that. You can end up with a big stack of fish under them and you just can't catch them in any other way. I think we might have found a little bit of a winner there. So pole together, decent pinch, 20 casters. Getting a bit closer, another pinch. Get the rig in there. Give it a little tap, fish on. As quick as that. And you're really thinking, well, you're pleasure fishing, Joe. But trust me, on lakes like this, in the match, it is as quick as this in the matches. That one. I'm starting to get them settled now. beautiful big F1, look at that. They're really growing in this lake now. There was a time when they were all about 6-8 ounces, but they're not anymore. They're piling the weight on. It's the only disadvantage to keeping your casters. Like these are casters from a little while ago and they've gone a bit soft for the band, so every time I'm catching a fish I'm having to replace it, but that's not a problem. Small price to pay. And we've seemed to have found a little routine here now. Put the pole together, throw some bait in, get into position, throw some more in, get the duck out of the way. Come on, duck. He's ruined my little routine there. And now I'm just going to do what I like doing, which is this little, like, it's not like fishing a jigger, but I just like the idea of catching their eye by just lifting the float out a little bit. Can work really well, that can, when you're fishing against the reeds. So lift up, drop it in. Lift up, drop it in. Lift up, drop it in. Like that. It can work really well. Alternatively, like I say, you can give it a bit of a tap. It's all about finding that correct depth. And maybe that we're just too deep, because I am getting a few indications here now. Yeah, I think I'm too deep. I think the fish are above me. Which is unbelievable when you're fishing so close in, but same rules apply to shallow fishing. These F1s don't read the rule book, they love feeding close to you. Particularly if you give them plenty of time to get confident, like we have done today. We've left them alone for, you know, several hours feeding them. Now they're in there. And they're actually lovely stamp fish as well. Lovely golden F1s. But I think they're a bit higher. I think they're a bit higher than where we're fishing. So I'm gonna make the adjustment. Okay, so just taking an inch off, which doesn't seem a trivial amount, but trust me, it can make a big difference. And we're just trying to find that sweet spot at the moment. Lift the float out, drop it in. Lift the float out. No bites this time. And try and give it a slap. Obviously slapping can work really well some days. I actually had a bite then. It's so easy to fish because you're fishing so close to you. Nothing. Pick a pinch up. Oh, that's a double. Throw 2 lots in. Why wouldn't you? Actually, taking that depth off hasn't. Oh, we did get one eventually, but it took a bit longer. So rather than, every fish is like a little match in itself, and reading your bristle and your float is everything. So I'm gonna stick that depth back on, and I just know that if I was to go on the bottom here, it'd just be a disaster. I'd be foul looking fish, missing bites. But fishing in this way is a very efficient and clean way of catching on a day like today, when you've got one of these reedy margins. I'm just going to start tapping again because I think that they quite like that. Missed it. Don't go mad with the tapping, just a little gentle sort of Morse code effect, if anything. Brilliant video, brilliant fishing. Nice to be doing this. I can't tell you how cold it is. It's actually, it was 4 degrees coming here this morning. And it can't have got much warmer because the sun hasn't come out at all. But the fishing here on this Willow Lake at Shearsby, if you haven't been, you've got to come and try it because it's so good. If you're into your F1 fishing, this is one of those lakes that is just full of them. And it's not for everyone, but I like it. So just get right in those reeds. And it seems to me like tapping is actually, yeah, tapping seems good today. Tapping against those reeds. It's noticeable that they're a good stamp, these are, for this lake. I'd be so happy catching them, one every chuck in like this. £1.5 every going. But lovely fish. So really, this is it. This is how easy it can be if you pick the right method on the right peg. And this is just a brilliant way of catching fish. So we're going to catch a couple more because I think there's something to be worked out yet. But I think we're getting there now. I think we're almost at optimum performance now because we're catching one every chuck in. We've got a little rig on. We're just giving the pole tip a little wiggle. And most of the time we're getting a pretty quick response. Funny how the lift and drop that I like to do, it did actually work that time. Hasn't been as good as tapping for some reason. Smaller. Seemed 2 minutes since they were all that big in this lake, but they're not now. There are going to be some big weights on here this summer, let me tell you. Hopefully from me. You notice what I said about having this bait on both sides? I naturally want to rebait going to my left, so I have to have a pot of casters on my left. Plus obviously I'd be feeding out in the lake or whatever for the early part of the match. But having this bowl here, I can just get into position, pick a pinch up. I just find it works better for me doing that. You may think like I'm always trying to aggravate them into taking the hook bait, and it is so true. I've rarely got my bait still. I think that's one thing that hopefully you can pick up from the footage. I'm either tapping, I'll give it a slap every now and again, I'll constantly lifting and dropping. I'm just trying to aggravate them because I know they're there. I've just got to try and get my hook bait to stand out over all the loose feed. And the only way you can do that is by making it stand out. And that might, like I say, that's sometimes what I've done to, like flicking it is best. Sometimes tapping the pole tip's best, which again we've been doing a bit of that. So it's all about, I'm just constantly trying to aggravate an F1 into taking my hook bait. Or more importantly, seeing my hook bait in amongst all the noise of the casters going in, the fish, the ducks, everything. So just lifting and dropping is obviously a visual stimulation, but the noise of pole tapping is like they can hear it. So some days it just depends what they're finding attractive. Now, I don't know if you noticed there, hopefully the camera picked it up, but I was getting an odd swirl, so maybe the fish have come, the ducks have gone now, so maybe that's made the fish come a little bit higher because the ducks aren't there now. They weren't swirling before. But we're getting an odd swirl now, so perhaps those ducks just going for a bit of a swim has meant the fish are coming a bit higher. So I'm just gonna come a bit shallower. In a match I'd have a few different rigs set up for this. So I could keep that, because I think it's important to keep a short line, but obviously I'm just filming today, so I'm not too bothered. But in a match, oh look at that, I'm really shallow. In a match it's well worth having a couple of rigs up if you've got the top kits. So you can keep that short line between your pole float and your pole tip. That's really important, that is. Lovely fish. Hopefully this is something that you'd be keen to try, because we're getting to that time now, May, when the fish are starting to think about spawning, and often they won't come out of them reeds. So having something like this up your sleeve to catch them is crucial. What's going on here? Something's gone onto my caster. Oh, I've got a caster shell on my hook. Hook point, shall I say. So, yeah, so having something like this up your armoury is really important. So I'm just going to... Noticeable, I just started swirling now. Oh yeah. Lifting and dropping. So finding the correct depth and then doing that lifting and dropping. Which is how I like to catch them, I must say. Right, I'll catch 2 more because I think it's worth 2 more. And then I'm going to go get in the van and get warm because I am absolutely frozen. I'm soaked through and I'm frozen. Hopefully you can just see how busy we are trying to get a bite. So we're constantly feeding, we're constantly trying to aggravate a bite by lifting and dropping, tapping, slapping. We're just working hard. I should have gone out on this one, shouldn't I? Because this is a nice fish. Oh yes, they're the boys. Look at them. And you wouldn't even know they were there. Look at that. Absolute beauties. They're the ones. In fact, I am going to go out on that one because he's a beauty. Lovely big Willows Lake F1 here at Shearsby. Beautiful. And if you are faced with this situation where you've got a deeper margin, don't despair. Give this little shallow trick a try. I'm not saying it's going to work every time, but if you have got a lot of F1s feeding, and if you've got the right swim with the right amount of fish in it, it might just work for you. So give it a try. Get some casters bought, get them thrown in against them reeds. You might catch a boatload of fish, like we have done today.